Hi guys, Drew here, back with another video, and welcome to another episode of GFR, the story of the Newfoundland Growlers. In today's episode, I will be talking about the 2021-22 Newfoundland Growlers team. And this team here, folks, was actually not that bad of a team. Definitely was probably like one of the worst in the 5 seasons, but that does not mean that they were bad. Like, they were dominant in their time spent. They finished the season with a 42-20-5 record. Not too bad, you gotta say there. But I mean, they weren't able to finish all 72 games due to COVID. But they were able to do well as their leading point scorer, as who Zach O'Brien, had 78 points in this season. He played really well for the Growlers actually in this season and many other seasons when he did with the Growlers. And I mean, the leading goal scorer, Orin Centazzo, and also Zach O'Brien. They tied for the same amount of goals. But that was Orin Centazzo's rookie season. So for him to do that, I found really impressive. Orin Centazzo, definitely one of the most memorable Growlers players, as most people remember him on being a pretty solid player. But he's actually headed to Europe next season, so it'll be interesting to see what happens with Orin. But yeah, so the leading defenseman in points actually was Ben Finkelstein. He joined the team halfway through the season. He only played 36 games. But 62 points for Benny. He was dominant. Ben Finkelstein just dominant for the Growlers. Power play quarterback for most of the season. When it got to playoff time, I believe they had Ben Finkelstein and Noel Hoffenmeyer running the defenseman unit on that power play, and two defensemen on one power play. Makes you think, oh, that power play may not be that good. But be honest, like, that power play was really good in the playoffs and the time Benny was with us. But the most underrated player I think I have for the Growlers in that time span was actually Darian Plouffe. There are some other names that you could go with here, like Gordy Green or Riley McCourt, but I decided to go with Darian Plouffe. Definitely one of the best, like maybe all-time best penalty killers on the Growlers in their history. He had 6 goals, 14 assists, and 20 points in 37 games. Darian Plouffe, definitely one of the most memorable Growlers. He spent like 3 seasons with the Growlers, I believe. Yeah, the first ever Growlers season, he won the Kelly Cup with them. I remember, I forgot to mention in the very first episode, but he had that memorable game against Matt Register when he blocked like 2 or 3 shots in a row against him. And Matt Register definitely had one of the hardest shots in the league, so brave enough for him. But he's a really good penalty killer. And he played in Norway last season. So he played really well actually as well for, I believe it's like Lillehammer HC or something. But they played really well, and so did Plouffe, as he is my most underrated player, in my opinion, on that Growler squad. But the high NHLers that were on this Growler squad there was only 2. And those 2 players were Mark Johnstone, probably more memorable, and you may remember him. He only played like 1 or 2 games for Pittsburgh this season. But then another player who's actually kind of impactful in the NHL so far is Bobby McMahon. He only played 4 games for the Growlers, and it was only at the start of the season. And the Marlies liked what they saw from Bobby, so they decided to call him up. And he just spent some time in the AHL with the Marlies, and he graduated from the AHL, and he played this year in the NHL, where for Toronto he played really well. But I was injured in the playoffs. But if he was healthy, he probably would have gotten himself some playoff games. Will probably be in the opening night roster for Toronto next season. But he's a really solid, like top 6, maybe a bottom 6 player, maybe like a second or third line type of a guy. But Bobby McMahon, he scored 4 points for the Growlers in his 4 games that he spent with us. So hats off to Bobby and his NHL career so far, and Mark Johnstone as well. But the highest and lowest plus minus, Orin Centazzo actually got the highest plus minus with a plus 34. Definitely one of the highest in Growlers history for in a season. I mean, Orin scoring Centazzo, definitely one of the best. One of the best type of guys. I mean, Scott Pooley in the very first season, he had the highest plus minus, and then Brady Ferguson had the highest points, had the highest plus minus, and now Centazzo tied with O'Brien for the most amount of goals. He gets the highest plus minus as well. But the lowest plus minus actually goes to Mark Johnstone, who's actually in the NHL right now. He had a minus 14. Definitely one of the lowest to finish off season in Growlers history. The lowest plus minus belongs to somebody who's in season 5. So we'll be there in about 2 weeks' time. So yeah. Yeah, so the leading penalty minutes actually in the season, I mean, just take a guess. I mean, you know who it is. James Miller Melindi. He had 92 penalty minutes in this season. The Growls actually, this is one of the more memorable seasons. Based off, we really thought this was going to be the last season for the Growlers, even though we had 2 seasons left. Based off because we started the season in CBS Arena. There was rumors that the Growls were going to move to the Marlies Arena all the way in the Coca-Cola Coliseum in Toronto, downtown Toronto, and just play their season there. But they want to stay home, so they went to CBS Arena, an arena that fits about 1,500 maybe. But that was actually a really cool experience. I went to most of those games. Um, yeah, and the Growls won most of them. I believe they lost one game to Worcester and maybe one game to Adirondack. I can't quite remember, but I remember that they were good games. And I also remember there was only one concession stand at the CBS Arena, and the lineup there was like out of the stadium. Like it was massive. Like it was around the concourse, all the area. And I mean, it was a good experience though. I mean, the Growlers maybe I always thought that they should have went back there for like a preseason game or so, but they actually went there for the start of season 4 for training camp, and I actually got to go see the training camp as well. So it was pretty nice to see that. And they seem to have connection with CBS Arena, so that's pretty nice. Another thought that they could have went to Corner Brooks Arena, which is probably the second biggest arena in Newfoundland. That holds about 4,000, 3,500 maybe. But it was pretty interesting thing here. But halfway through the season, the Growls finally changed their goal song, and they changed it to "Walking on Sunshine." And I mean, that was definitely one of the better goal songs in Growls history, honestly. I know most people aren't that big on goal songs, but honestly am. Like at the start of the season, I was like, when the Growls scored their first goal, I was like, what's the goal song? Like I really want to know. Or like when Team Canada in the World Juniors this year, when they scored, I was like, is it going to be Heave Away? Or and it ended up being another Newfoundland song, but wasn't Heave Away. But I'm really interested into the goal songs. But Walking on Sunshine became New Growl's goal song, so that was actually pretty nice. I mean, that was like the only it was the only Growlers goal song that wasn't from Newfoundland. They've Growls had about 5 goal songs in their history, so Walking on Sunshine, definitely one of the best. Maybe do a tier list maybe sometime about some of the best Growlers goal songs. But it was only like 5 or 6, so not too much, not that big of a tier list. But the team was actually eliminated from the first time in the franchise's history in the Eastern Conference Finals to the Florida Everblades, who in season 1 they beat in the conference final. So Florida kind of gets the revenge on the Growlers in that matchup. But Zach Solo was actually one of the better players on that Everblade squad. He plays for the Growlers in season 4, who will be here next week. So pretty interesting fact there. But the Growlers, they get eliminated for the first time against the Everblades. I mean, the Everblades in that series were pretty dominant compared to what the Growlers were doing. They were pretty much, yeah, they were just a better team pretty much. But the All Star for the Growlers in this year was Zach O'Brien. Eric Wellwood was also nominated, but they both did not participate in the ACHL All Star game. For some reason they didn't go. Zach O'Brien also got nominated next year, but he wasn't able to go, and they got another player that went that I'll mention in the next episode. But Zach O'Brien got nominated for the Growls to go to the All Star game, but he didn't. In this offseason, Marcus Power, one of the most memorable Growls players, signed overseas for the Vienna Capitals of the Ice HL in the offseason. But he actually retires shortly after due to concussion issues. He just had big concussion issues when he was with the Growlers squad, and he left the Growlers to sign in Vienna, which is actually in Austria. So he went to go sign there, but he actually never got to play a game for them due to concussion problems. But Marcus, he played really well for the Growlers, played really well in his college in PEI. But yeah, Marcus definitely one of the better Growlers players in their history. Probably one of the most underrated as well. I mean, hometown heroes usually don't get that underrated, but out of all of them, he's probably one of the most because I mean he's under the shadow of guys like Zach O'Brien, James Melindi, not Nathan Knoll, but Marcus Power, definitely one of the better Growlers players in their time. But Marcus Power, yeah, definitely one of the better Growlers. But in this year, the Growls build up a new rivalry with a new foe in the ECHL in the Trois Rivières Lions. They end up coming the ECHL, new affiliate with Montreal Canadiens. They still exist here in the ECHL. But a new foe comes, and that is the Trois-Rivières Lions. And the Growlers build up a big rivalry with them. I remember that one game where it was like Tommy Velia, one of the players on the Lions. You probably don't remember him that much. But I remember he was like snowing the goalie, shooting after the whistle. He had a fishbowl on as well, so he couldn't really like drop the gloves or anything like that in the game. But I remember one of the times, like after the whistle, his fishbowl got put off and he dropped the gloves with Ben Finkelstein actually. But that was a pretty good season for the Growlers, and they had a new head coach in Eric Wellwood, so it was definitely interesting to see what Wellwood could have done, and he pushed his team all the way to the finals, the Eastern Conference Finals, my bad. But Wellwood he returned he returned next season in season 4, so he did pretty well there as well. But we'll talk about that next episode. Another memorable game that I'd like to talk about is the game where I think it was Game 5 of the second round, the Matthew Minetti game. Most of you guys remember this. You just know that ECHL refs are just absolutely the worst. Like honestly, like it seemed like when I did GFR, this is a GFR, but when I did GFRs back in the regular season, it seemed like every single game I was talking about how bad the refs are, and there's definitely worse refs like Brendan Schreider, maybe Austin Heideman or Austin O'Rourke, oh, Mark Olivier enough. But this Matthew Minetti game was pretty rough. Like I think there was about 0 penalties in that game. Todd Skirring actually ended up dropping the gloves at one point, and things just got into a mess. And the Growls actually ended up winning that game, so that's kind of better to know from. But Skirby actually broke out in the regular season for the Growlers. I believe he had 21 goals, 20 assists for 41 points. Skirby, definitely since then played really well. He was definitely like a fourth liner for the Growlers in the 2019-20 season. But then he came to season 3, and he was coming for something to do well in, and he did good. He was definitely getting like those top 6 minutes as he deserved in that season, and one of the better players in their playoff run. But yeah, how do you guys think of seasons of 3 of the Newfoundland Growlers? It was definitely a memorable one. I mean, they played the Trois-Rivières Lions in round 1, and they were actually to beat them in 7. Then they played Reading, whatever you want to pronounce them as. They beat them in 7. The Growls were actually down 3-1 in the series against Reading, and they came back and won that series, so that was pretty impressive for them to do. But then in the Trois-Rivières series, they were actually up 3-1, blew it, went to Game 7, and they were able to win that one. But they also, in the Florida Everblades series, they lost that series in 5, I believe. So pretty unfortunate in that series, but I mean, they lost on an overtime winner from Xavier Bouchard, who actually is no longer playing hockey. He may return, he may not. We'll have to wait and see what happens with that. But that's going to be it for today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. If you do, you can like this video. You can subscribe if you really liked it. We're on the road to 300 subscribers. If you could hit that subscribe button down below, I'd really appreciate it. That's it for today's video, guys. I'll talk to you all again in Season 4.